Welcome, good morning, honored guests. We thank the Mississauga of the Credit First Nations for sharing their traditional territory with us so we can conduct this meeting today. I'm Cheryl Hales, President of the International Alliance of Women and your moderator. We're pleased that you've joined us to participate in this parallel event, which will focus on the challenges and opportunities for women and girls in the midst of a global climate crisis. Now let's get into the session without delay. The panel will reflect on the intersectionality, which is the connection between and among education, economic empowerment, gender-based violence, peace, and justice as it relates to human rights for women and girls. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said this about our common agenda. Humanity faces a stark and urgent choice: breakdown or breakthrough. The choices we make or fail to make today could result in further breakdown and a future of perpetual crisis, or a breakthrough to a better, more sustainable, peaceful future for our people and planet. Our common agenda is an agenda of action designed to strengthen and accelerate multilateral agreements, particularly the 2030 Agenda, and make a tangible difference in people's lives, end of quote. We share that belief that we must all participate in the breakthroughs for a better, more sustainable and peaceful future. Access to education, services, and employment diminishes in crisis areas. Given these challenges, the panel will review the progress toward fulfilling human rights obligations and commitments to the 2030 Agenda. Our keynote speaker, Dr. Pamela Rose Toulouse, is a visiting scholar in the Faculty of Education at York University. She's a proud Anishinaabe Cree member of Sagamok First Nation in Northern Ontario, Canada. Dr. Pam, as she is most fondly known, is the recipient of the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance Teaching Excellence Award in 2021, Inspiring Indigenous Women of Northeastern Ontario Award in 2019, 3M National Teaching Excellence Fellow Award in 2015, Laurentian University Full-Time Faculty Teaching Excellence Award 2014, and the Laurentian University Professional Schools Teaching Excellence Award 2023. She is the author, researcher, and developer of over 55 resources in Indigenous education. Dr. Pam has 29 years of experience across the education continuum, from K, which is kindergarten, to grade 12, post-secondary, and administration. She's not able to be with us in person today because of a prior commitment, but she has sent a video which represents her voice. I now turn it over to the tech team. Thank you.
Ani and Bojo, wase ekawabekwen indigenous ginoje doram segmuknishnabek donjaba. Now, what I have said in my language is that I have located myself here in my own traditional territories. I am known as She That Looks Ahead, and I'm from the community called Sagamuk Anishinaabeg. I am Anishinaabe. And what that means is that I come from this beautiful Three Fires Confederacy of the Ojibways, the Odawas, and the Potawatomis. Not only that, what I said to you in my language was Ginoje Dodem, or else the family to which I belong, which goes beyond just blood, is one that is called the Fish People. And we are, again, those beautiful individuals that are the original teachers, mediators, and philosophers in my nation. Many other people, again, especially in the academic world, know me as Dr. Pamela Rose Toulouse. And I have been a proud educator, again, teacher and scholar for a little over 3 decades. And I come to you today with some really great helpers. I bring to you this really great, amazing, again, teacher which is this beautiful stone. And it is a teaching stone for me. Not only that, the other great, again, like, teacher for me that I bring today is this beautiful sweetgrass that has been braided, and that is that reminder of our connection to our mother, the earth. Now, I've been really asked, and invited, to talk about the climate crisis and how it affects human rights. And I was asked to do this, again, from an Indigenous lens. And I've really thought about this. I've thought good and hard about it and reflected on it. And actually, what I would like to do is I would really like to unpack, again, some of the discourse around the climate crisis, my friends. Because here is the way that I view it from my own lens as an Anishinaabe Kwe, all right? And I'm located here in Northern Ontario. My home community is right on top of Lake Huron. And this is my traditional home since time immemorial. My good helpers will help to ground me today in order that I may speak from a good place where it is that my mind and my heart and my spirit are connected in that good way. So, my friends, climate crisis, right? We need to ask ourselves, number one, why are we in a climate crisis? Because we definitely are, but I would like to actually change, again, the words that we are using. And instead of saying climate crisis, I would actually say that Ake, our mother, the earth, Ake, that she is Akze, that she is ill, right? So our great mother, Ake, the earth, is Akze, she is ill. Now, why is she ill, right? Why is it that our great mother and that her waters, her lifeblood and her veins, and that all of her beauty, her plant beings, the animal beings, those that fly, those that swim, those that are seen and unseen, why is it that they are Akze? Why is it that they are ill, right? And what we need to do is we need to look directly into that mirror and really, again, look at ourselves, look at the structures that we align with, and again, look at the own work that we need to do to decolonize ourselves, right? Because our mother is ill, her children are ill, and the reason that they're ill is because colonial structures still continue, again, to maintain so much power. And not only that, that what they continue to do is that they continue to aid in ensuring that our mother stays ill. And what I mean by that, my beautiful friends, is that the very notion, right? The very notion that we right away think about, rights, right? So right away, we think about the two-leggeds, the human beings. We think about the two-leggeds and our rights and how these are affected by climate crisis is often positioned as, the question that we shouldn't be asking. But what we should be asking ourselves is, why is our mother sick? And not only that, why is it that we as the two-leggeds have neglected our responsibilities, right? Our responsibilities rather than our rights to take care of our mother, our first mother, and all of her children. So when I talk about her children, I am talking about those beautiful plant beings. I'm talking about these beautiful stone beings. I am talking about those beautiful flowers, those trees. I'm talking about the air. I'm talking about the soil. I'm talking about all of those animals and all of those beautiful beings wherever you're located. And, the state that we're in our world, right, is that, here we are, like in Canada, which is a first world country. And yet, over 50% of First Nations communities don't even have access to clean water. And that, for me, is really telling of how far it is, that colonial reach continues, again, to happen. So a lot of folks will say, well, you know what, colonialism happened in the past, right? But no, colonialism is still present as long as our mother continues to be ill, as long as we don't have access to fresh water, and as long as we don't have access to fresh air, right? So this is really critical, but it's also about us, really, again, looking back at our responsibilities. What responsibilities do we have to the next 7 generations, those that are yet unborn? Now, this is, again, a really fundamental teaching in my community, in the Anishinaabeg community. And what we say is we say this, we say, Nogduendemin gigiabe wabamadzjig. And what that means is thinking 7 generations ahead. So that any time that we plan any type of, again, events or activities, or else we think about how it is we're going to live in this life as individuals and as communities, and how it is that we are going to walk upon our great mother, Akeh, is that we do so thinking 7 generations ahead. And this is a teaching that is, again, foundational. It is critical to my own community. Now, the reason why, I really want to, again, talk about responsibilities is because we are in a society that is so focused in on rights, right? It is, all about, I have the right to this, I have the right to that. But what, again, people are neglecting to say as well is that, yes, I have, again, the right to clean water. I have the right to clean air, but I also have a responsibility to ensure that, again, that the next 7 generations also have the right to clean water and clean air. Our beautiful mother, our first mother, is so kind with us. She gives us, everything that it is that we need to survive and thrive. And each season here, she reminds us of the roles that we have. And, those roles that we have, to embody those teachings that she is offering us. Right now, we're about to enter into the spring equinox. And here, like in this beautiful territory in Northern Ontario, that beautiful spring equinox, my friends, is really a time that we call Zispokdogizis. And what is Zispokdogizis? So in my language, Anishinaabemowin, Zispokdogizis really is sugar moon. And what I want to talk about is that, that sugar moon is this reminder of renewal, right? It is that reminder of the connection that we have to those beautiful, again, tree beings, those beautiful maple tree beings, those beautiful birch tree beings. And that what those beings do every spring, is that they let their beautiful sap run out. And it is a medicine. It is a medicine for the people. It is a medicine that helps, again, to cleanse us. It is also a time that we're outdoors. We come together in our family units. We share stories, we share teachings, we work together, we laugh together, and we take care of those tree beings in a good way. We are in a time that would be called a climate crisis. You can call it global warming, but it really is that our mother and her children are ill. And, this is, again, a time that we really need to really consider, again, my good friends, and really think about, again, how it is that we go about and we do our work. And not only that, especially in the realm of education. And I'm going to talk about how colonialism and the power of binaries in education, again, really continues to reinforce this idea, right, that there are non-living things, all right? So rooted in colonialism, my friends, and not only that, right, colonial thought is this idea of binaries, right? So binaries, or else things that are adversarial, things that are opposite, things that are more than and that there are less than. And I'll give you an example. If we take a look even at curriculum in schools, there is, this absolute distinguishing between what is living and what is not. Not only that, if we look at, again, across the globe, and we look at countries that have been colonized, they've always been colonized under this guise that someone had to be superior and another, again, group of people had to be inferior. Not only that, we have, again, these notions, again, that things are dead or they're alive. And not only that, these binaries that continue to, again, reaffirm that there is just male and that there's just female. And not only that, my friends, is that it continues to separate us from the land. That this binary type of thinking, right? This binary type of thinking, less than, more than, inferior, superior, that what it does is that it continues to disconnect us from our mother, right? And this is why she is ill. So one of the things is that, you know what, education really does have a primary role really in addressing how it is that we are going to heal our great mother and our beautiful mother, right? You know, those teachings that are done in relationship with Indigenous communities and peoples around our globe really does need to come from the people. So in other words, those connections, knowing that our beautiful stone people, that they come from communities, that they are families, knowing, you know, that these beautiful medicines like sweetgrass, you know, that what they do is that they bring us, you know, these beautiful teachings about the mind, body, and spirit. And that when we braid them, and when we braid this beautiful sweetgrass after it's been dried, and it smells so beautiful, and whenever we, you know, use it as a smudge, it helps to cleanse and also to draw a prayer, is that we need to really get back to those foundations of being out in the land, being out again with our mother. We need to be able to foster inquiry and curiosity, but also sit with Indigenous peoples and learn about the land. Now, many of you, you know, might be familiar with what I would call territorial or else land acknowledgements. And you might be thinking, well, why is it that we do this, right? So you might hear them at various events. And even here in my territory, you know, non-Indigenous, again, events and individuals and organizations will acknowledge, again, the treaty territories that they're currently occupying, right? So non-Indigenous peoples. And I want you to know that land acknowledgements are really critical, again, to addressing the health of our mother, the earth, right? Ake. And this is the reason why. What a land acknowledgement does is that it reaffirms, again, for all peoples, it reaffirms that you are in the sacred and traditional territories of Indigenous peoples from time immemorial. But not only that, it is also the way that we think and the worldview that we bring, which is very much circular and about the sacred. Is that when you start to learn more about how it is that Indigenous peoples honor the land, that we see this, you know, beautiful earth as our relation. We talk about everything that, you know, that this is, you know, my Nokomis, my grandmother, you know, that this is my Mishomis, my grandfather. We talk about the moon, that she is our grandmother. There's my Nokomis. We talk about all of, you know, the plant beings, you know, as beings, that they are living and that they are our relations. Anytime that we end any of our prayers or anything that we're doing in a public domain, we always say all my relations. And all my relations is not just the two-leggeds. It goes so beyond that. So to me, you know, when I think about human rights, I think about human responsibilities, that we two-leggeds have a responsibility to the more than humans that are, again, those beautiful children of our mother, the earth. So for me, that really is the conversation that we need to be having. We need to really start changing this narrative. We need to, again, make sure, you know, that wherever we are, whatever our scope of work and practice is, that we really start thinking about how is it that I teach or I have conversations, you know, about land, right? Do I talk about things as non-living? Because for us, there is nothing that, you know, does not contain some type of life force. You know, all things have come from something that has, you know, you know, some type of genetic memory. So again, this disconnect, you know, this really, again, this colonial thought about binaries, you know, is something that we really need to start unpacking and decolonizing. My beautiful friends, the other thing is when I talk about those generations, again, yet to be born, for us to live in that way, I really want to share with you this very beautiful song, that comes from Indigenous youth right here in Canada. And this is their clear message to all of us. It is their call in. It is their call to action, where they're saying to us, they're saying to all of us, Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples, show us the way. Be those leaders, be those leaders that can empower us, that can give us the space to share our voice, to know that our great mother is ill. And why is she ill? We need to look at ourselves. We need to start holding public policy and organizations and structures accountable for the damage that they continue to do, and to do so without recourse or consequence. I want to share with you, my friends, probably one of the most beautiful songs coming from youth that are, really, again, calling us to act, and to act today. So I will ask you again, my friends, to really listen to the words of these young people that are saying, show us the way, my friends. Make the space for our voices to be heard. And not only that, take care of our beautiful mother.
Says that listening is caring. We're different in this staring. So let me find the courage. Singing for my people. I'll show you that it's worth it.
Way up, way up, way up, way up. See who I am, I got something to say. Hey, 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 I'll show you I can, don't wanna be afraid. I'll keep learning for the rest of my days. So I will stand tall if you teach me the ways. As we look to the future, will you see me the same? So I will stand tall if you teach me the ways. As we look to the future, will you see me the same? I've been wrestling with who I am. Yahoo, yahoo. But let it all go through a dance. Yahoo, yahoo. There are comments that feeds my heart. Yahoo, yahoo. Keeps the hunger for who we are. Yahoo, yahoo.
Been feeling anxious, I'm too shy to speak in public. But I know one day I'll lead and I'll love it. Hoping for my nation, I've been growing, I've been changing. Connected to the world in this emoji generation.
Where people taking selfies, but so many feel alone. Now we're here to come together. I wanna feel at home, find some honor and respect, and pass on tradition. We have lived on through the songs that we're singing. Way up, way up, way up, way up. See who I am, I got something to say. Hey, 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 I'll show you I can, don't wanna be afraid. I'll keep learning for the rest of my days. So I will stand tall if you teach me the ways.
my beautiful friends. So I am back with you. And again, that is a call in, that is a call out. And those beautiful grade 5 and 6 students, they are all Indigenous, again, from a school on the British Columbia coast. And what they have done is they are calling out to us. They are saying, listen, our mother, right? Our mother, Ake, that she is ill. She is okze. And they are asking us, they're calling on us to start focusing in our responsibilities. Let us think about our responsibilities. And again, to show them the way that we are committed to the next 7 generations and making a difference, really making a difference to ensure that, again, that all of those beautiful beings, Mother Earth's children, not just us, the 2-leggeds, again, have the space, have the health, and have the good life that they deserve and that they have the right to. So with that, my friends, I say miigwech and I say marci, nakermeek, wache. Again, my beautiful friends, again, and not only that, hi, and with that, all.
Thank you, Dr. Pam, for your insightful words on the impact of climate crisis on Indigenous communities in Canada. I wasn't sure I was on. Thank you, Dr. Pam, for your insightful words on the impact of the climate crisis on Indigenous communities in Canada. We are very grateful that you were able to share that video of the grade 5 students, and we will share that video link later on with our attendees. As well, this is being recorded to be posted on the YouTube channel, so you will have access to that as well. What a very inspirational and motivational stance that the students have taken to remind us of what we need to do. Thank you so much. According to the 6th assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, unprecedented, intensified, rapid, and widespread climate change is affecting all regions of the globe. To unpack this very complex topic, our panel was specifically invited from different fields and from diverse regions and backgrounds. We have with us today Mrs. Marina Hisoon, architect. Her topic is Sustainable Design, Learning to Build a New Environment for a Livable Future, a Canadian Perspective. Dr. Savory, who is Executive Director of Olympe de la Parole Canada and founder. Her topic is Meaningful Youth Engagement in the Climate Crisis Conversation and Solutions. Maître Catherine Sophie Dimitrolis is the IAW Regional VP for Europe and President of AFEM, and her topic is Impact of Climate Change on Women in the Mediterranean Basin. Our panelists will unpack these topics for us. Given the big question, how does the topic presented by the UN relate to and advance the theme of CSW-66? So the big question, how does the topic that we're unpacking today relate to and advance the theme of CSW-66? This topic identifies barriers specifically faced by women in migrant situations, violence and risk management, and preparedness as it relates to economic empowerment. We recognize that it is important to create opportunity through education, identifying and implementing successful actions, programs, and ensuring accountability measures are embedded to secure the empowerment of women and girls at risk due to the climate crisis. With a background in architecture and urban planning, Marina has a rich understanding of the factors that influence our built environment and consequently our energy emissions. She is an architect and director of Green Propeller Design, a consulting firm employing best practices to achieve a life without fossil fuels. promoting energy efficient strategies and sustainability in all of her work. A longtime advocate for passive energy sources and respect for the natural environment, Marina is currently a board member of Sustainable Milton, Ontario, Canada, a grassroots community organization promoting a more sustainable future. As a business owner, Marina has a wealth of experience in navigating the sometimes complex dynamics of competing business and public interests. Advocating for women to bring gender equality to all aspects of our society is another focus of Marina's work. As president of the Canadian Federation of University Women Milton and District, Marina is also active in advocacy campaigns to improve the lives of women and girls. Welcome to the mic, Marina.
Thank you, Cheryl. And thank you to Dr. Pam for setting us up in a very interesting way for talking about our responsibilities towards a healthy planet. This presentation is going to be about the built environment and our cities and homes. As we combat global warming and climate change, the sustainability of the planet is our goal. By learning how we can achieve a socially equitable, fossil fuel-free, and environmentally respectful world, we will hopefully be able to leave a livable planet for future generations. How do we do that? By reducing our reliance on fossil fuels so that CO2 emissions stop and our planet can regain its environmental balance to sustain life. As an architect, I can take two directions to address the problem of climate change. I can advocate for more efficient urban design and land use with a social conscience and design better buildings. Global warming is the climate crisis that we face. Carbon dioxide emissions are the main problem that we must tackle. How do we stop emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere? How do we promote social equality through the choices we make about the built environment? How do we go forward with a more respectful relationship with nature? Sustainable architecture seeks to minimize the negative environmental impact of buildings through improved efficiency and moderation in the use of materials, energy, development space, and the ecosystem at large. Sustainable architecture uses a conscious approach to energy and ecological conservation in the design of the built environment. In North America and in Europe, the suburbs were conceived as a dream for the future. In an effort to give people their dream of property ownership that is so embedded in our sense of accomplishment, our sense of security, land was generously given over to create a great healthy change from the foul and congested environment of the city. The low density nature of these suburbs is what has led to our current tension between built growth and nature, between residential subdivisions and farmland. What was for 100 years considered highly desirable must change in order to fight global warming. The suburbs as a social construct are based on a nuclear family model and outdated measures of success. Our new paradigm must respond to an entirely different demographic and different social values. Social equality must be baked in with policies that support a diverse community where gender bias, discrimination, and pay inequality do not impact our lifestyle choices. In North America, the private car has for very long been the expression of individual freedom and status. The ownership and reliance on private vehicles has resulted in development with more than 50% of the land being paved with asphalt. Land that has now lost its usefulness as Earth's lungs, land that cannot absorb rainwater. Car dependency has driven CO2 emissions through the roof worldwide. Whether commuting or transporting goods, the distances between home and work, between product sources and destinations, make a difference to our CO2 emissions. We must design our communities so that cars do not take up so much space on roads and parking areas. Our natural environment is under threat from development. Every acre of farmland that we take for urban development is a loss for food security, a loss for biodiversity, and will exacerbate extreme weather events by adding to our CO2 emissions. New development needs to be more frugal and more thoughtful about land use in response to the climate crisis. The threat of flooding is very present. As we pave more roads and driveways, that flooding threat increases. Extreme weather events create large volumes of water that have nowhere to soak in. Gravity will decide where it goes. And this is causing increased flooding events in our cities. This is the direct fault of our poor land stewardship. We must design our communities to leave natural areas intact and to recognize the flood control that is provided by soak-away surfaces like grass and fields. The region of Halton, where I live, is a large watershed, rivers all flowing towards Lake Ontario. These are nature's plumbing system. Maintaining open land for the watercourses is critical if we're to avoid flooding threats. Halton is also one of the most built up and paved over areas of Ontario. Planning policies in the past have not taken into account the impact of development on our natural environment, and the cost of this is high. In order to combat the effects of climate change and global warming, the planning rules for development should change. We can no longer continue the pattern of development that we're used to. We have to stop thinking of adapting the type of development that we have and think about how to make a new kind of urban environment, an environment designed around and with nature. Key to this is density. Density will drive change. Low density development, such as the suburbs, has been shown to be bad for the environment. It is wasteful use of precious land. It contributes to car dependence and CO2 emissions. It reduces rainwater absorption and leads to flooding. It reduces local food production, removes habitat for plants and animals, and adds to global warming and heat domes. In this slide is depicted how much land would be needed for 7 billion people if we all lived at certain densities. You can see that in China, the density that they use is, if you could go back to the previous slide, that the density that they use would accommodate the 7 billion people in one globe. But if we all lived at the density of the United States of America, we would need 4 planets to accommodate the same amount of people. This is an indication of how wasteful we are of land in North America. Next slide, please. Building compact and efficient communities is becoming the new best practice. This slide shows how some GTA Ontario communities compare from a density standpoint. At the low suburban end, it's 30 people per hectare. And at the high end, Toronto downtown, for instance, is up to 600 people and jobs per hectare. A density of about 80 people per hectare is needed to support a public transit system. A higher density is also needed to produce a walkable neighborhood, affordable housing, and a vibrant mixed-use community. Public transportation systems have been identified as one of the major keys to success in achieving a net zero future. A bus system will also cause a reduction in cars and car parking spaces. Public transit is needed to enable us to ditch the car. As well as carbon emissions from tailpipes, cars within our residential areas also take up a lot of space. Here we see a comparison of 2 parking spaces to a full 2-bedroom apartment. If we want to improve our land use, we need to prioritize how to make better use of it. Single-story shopping malls with a sea of parking are also a dreadful waste of land. These developments are the outcome of zoning constraints, parking requirements, and a lack of incentive to build more densely. Given the evolution of retail from stores to online, I would think that a new vision for retail malls would be welcome. Let's make the old shopping malls into vibrant mixed-use areas with reduced amounts of parking on transit lines and add compatible uses to make a more vibrant place. The same attitude of higher density should also be applied to these barren, car-centric main streets all over Ontario. These environments are not walkable. They are also uninteresting. Adding compatible uses, such as residential apartments, offices, retirement living, etc., will invigorate our current single-use zoning areas and build more socially equitable neighborhoods. Planning policy here in Ontario strives to achieve a target density of people and jobs, 60 people per hectare and 60 jobs per hectare. In this context, some of our worst land use examples are the low-rise warehouses, where acres of pavement and acres of asphalt roofs are built that give very little back, with very few jobs and a huge land requirement. More efficient building forms are needed. Land use policies are needed that ties land utilization to employment growth numbers, and where incentives exist to make stacking viable and oceans of car parking unnecessary. Land use policies are also needed to create diverse and rich residential and mixed-use areas, which will better support the wide spectrum of our community. We have a significant problem of affordability. Density and variety will enable low-income, young, and single people to find affordable living options. We have to find a new paradigm for building, and in the process, find creative forms of housing, urban living communities, and build a foundation for a livable future. There are many, many forms of housing that double the current suburban density without becoming high-rise. A feature that is common to many of these developments is the reduction of the outdoor private domain and the introduction of semi-public and public outdoor spaces where neighbors can come together socially and kids can play safely outside their front door. Such developments frequently remove cars, garages, and parking spaces from the residential core, making more space available at less cost to the environment. Here are some examples of planning ideas with higher densities, but also that strive to reduce reliance on cars, work with nature, and use less energy. BedZed is one of the early attempts to create a net zero community. It's in a place called Beddington near London in England, and it's a trailblazer for zero energy design. It uses district energy, natural ventilation, solar panels, and mixed uses to create a car-free interior public space and a better type of development for the planet. False Creek set out to be a net zero energy community too, as a value add for the 2010 Winter Olympics. Although it didn't meet its net zero energy goal, it has become a desirable, walkable community with a density of about 250 units or 500 people per hectare. Here's another example from Vancouver by a firm called Space Architects. Can you advance the slide, please? In this case, 2 heritage houses were moved and became 7 dwelling units, higher density and also a lower energy use per family. Well-designed intensifications like this will increase the existing low-density areas to more interesting neighborhoods. This one is a place called Sparenburg in the Bosch in Holland, which is a residential community that has a density similar to some of our suburbs here in Ontario, but with significant outdoor areas, trees, trails, woods, car-free interiors, and a variety in building design. Next slide. You can see that the houses are quite interesting in their shape. There's lots of nature around them. And although you can bring a car to the front door, you have to take it back and park it in a communal parking area, so that this area, if you can advance to the next slide, please, is available for social space and nature and a big social playground. What many of these developments have in common is that they are not designed around the private car. The car has been factored out. Here are some more examples of higher density infill projects. Next slide, please. This one is 400 people per hectare. All of the parking is underground, and the interior is a community courtyard space. This next slide is a retail conversion. Just advance the slide, please. Is a retail conversion proposing to redevelop an existing retail block to add retirement and townhouses, which is a perfect strategy for densification. Redevelopment like this increases the density and avoids the costly infrastructure that would have been needed if it was built in a previously undeveloped greenfield location. Socially, the benefits of introducing such uses into existing low-density urban areas are obvious. More people, more diversity, mixed uses equals a more vibrant community with walkable distances to shops and services. Density is not just for new development. It has to be a feature of existing neighborhoods too. This slide shows that even in an existing residential area, you can organically intensify with the appropriate planning regulations. Small additions are allowed, front, back, up, in between, and over time, the density increases. We can enable and encourage secondary dwelling units, laneway houses, coach houses, shared housing, residential areas designed not around the car, but designed around the person. The bottom line is, if we can find a way to accommodate the projected population within what's called the built boundary as it exists today, then we must, in the pursuit of a sustainable future, do so. One last example of adaptation and reuse before we go on to talk about energy efficiency of buildings is this one, an old warehouse, which now has a commercial greenhouse producing food locally on the roof. If traditional agriculture and farming cannot meet the demand of local food production, ideas like this could bridge the gap. So now we'll talk about how to build better buildings. There is a direct link between development and climate change. Buildings are amongst the greatest emitters of carbon dioxide from operational sources. Buildings contribute to CO2 emissions in two ways. The materials used and the construction process have a carbon footprint, i.e. result in CO2 emissions. And then there is the energy used throughout the life of the building, usually gas or oil, for running the heating and cooling systems. We have to reduce to zero the CO2 emissions related to buildings, and we can. Building better buildings will have a positive impact on our CO2 emissions or carbon footprint. In addition to improving the insulation of the walls and the airtightness of the building, current best practices use passive sources of energy, such as solar by way of photovoltaics, geothermal, and to a lesser extent, wind. These buildings are also healthier to be in, with low VOCs and better indoor air quality. Concrete, which is ubiquitous in the building construction, has a very high global warming potential. The process of making cement from limestone is CO2 intensive, and the concrete making is also CO2 intensive. The construction industry is producing increasingly good materials that don't use fossil fuels and that enable us to design high performance buildings. Here in Canada, winter temperatures can drop to -20 and in summer rise to +30, which is a huge difference in temperature when your indoor temperature is at a relatively constant 20 to 22 degrees. The building envelope, as it's called, or the shell, needs to be a warm blanket in the winter and protection from heat in the summer. How well or how badly we build that shell is directly related to the amount of energy you will need to run the heating and the cooling system. In order to build better buildings, we can both build a better shell and we can reduce the surface area of the wrapper. Both of these strategies will make a huge difference. In order to minimize the energy needed to heat and cool our houses, current best practices use passive sources of energy, including solar photovoltaics and geothermal heating, but also use passive house principles of highly insulated walls, avoiding thermal bridges, avoiding air leakage, optimizing window locations, installing triple glazing, and heat pump technology for the heating and the cooling systems. Windows are the weakest part of the building envelope. They let through a lot of heat and cold compared to the solid walls. If you see an office building that has the same windows on all four sides, you know immediately that designers did not take into account the sun, the wind, or the energy losses caused by the building envelope. Windows facing west will result in a lot of heat buildup in the afternoon on a sunny day. Windows on the north will result in no heat gain. So the amount of windows and the size of the windows should be different on each face of the building to optimize heat gain, shading from the summer sun, and to minimize heat loss. Other things to do include better levels of insulation. Can you advance the slide? Thank you. Make sure that there are no air leaks. Think about windows. Design an air handling system to ventilate adequately for the number of people living in the house. These combined strategies make what is called a passive house. The shape of your home also matters. The wall surface area of your apartment, if you could show the next slide, please, is much less than the exposed, next slide. The wall surface area of your apartment is much less than the exposed wall surface area of a freestanding house for the same amount of floor space. The more heat loss surface area, the higher your heating bill is going to be. Next slide. An increasing number of architecture firms, including my own, as well as engineers and designers, are promoting what's called net zero design and reducing the carbon content of buildings. A net zero building is one where the energy used to make and operate them is reduced to a minimum and then balanced by carbon offsets in the form of passive energy. By using less energy, not only will we pave the way for a clean, zero carbon future, but renters and owners will also save money on energy bills. So wrapping up, positive change for our sustainable future requires all these themes to come together. We must reduce the amount of land that we use for our cities, reduce the amount of asphalt, and quit our addiction to gas fuel modes of transportation. We must reduce CO2 emissions related to buildings and reduce the use of materials with a high global warming potential. We must also consider the social implications of our land use decisions. A sustainable future also means that we use land more equitably for a broader spectrum of people. We can work towards the idea of the 15-minute city in which we can access all of our daily needs, services, and shops within 15 minutes, a 15-minute walk, a 15-minute bike ride, or a 15-minute bus trip. Next slide. And the next one, please. Farmland and farming must be given importance in planning by acknowledgement of its value, by incentivizing the continuation of farming, and by supporting the agricultural sector. We can respect the natural environment by protecting natural systems such as rivers, natural habitat, by prioritizing fresh air, clean water, and public access, and by measuring the CO2 emissions of a proposed development and using that information to inform decisions. Social gathering spaces and placemaking generally will contribute greatly to our well-being and community. Governments are trying, but legislation is moving too slowly. But we don't have to wait. We can cause change by our own behavior and purchasing choices. We can change our fuel source from fossil fuels to other types of fuels. Even without changing zoning policies, we can push for change by building better buildings, using new technology and carbon neutral options for construction and operation. Within our own homes, you can install heat pumps, replace your leaky windows with triple glazed insulated windows, create biodiverse plantings wherever possible, and ultimately reduce CO2 emissions. We will maintain the natural environment by reducing land use. Next slide. We will stop using asphalt and petroleum. We will build more energy efficiently. And we will use non-fossil fuel sources for heating and cooling to ultimately reduce CO2 emissions. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Your work and insightful solutions reveal a layer of commitment to sustainable development we do not often find in architectural firms. Your leadership in this regard has a positive impact on the climate crisis. And for that, we're very grateful that there are thoughtful architects out there looking for solutions and working towards zero net pollution. Thank you so much. Dr. Savory, our next speaker, is president, founder of Olympe de la Parole Canada, Olympia Canada. She is a specialist in environment, occupational health and safety, who spent over 30 years supporting local and international chemical industries in managing their EOHS risks. She has also spearheaded Train the Trainer and curriculum development teams in Manitoba, Alberta, British Columbia, and the USA. She is currently a researcher. She has a long and successful history of advocacy for girls' and women's rights, and she was a member of the Treasury Board Secretariat's Employment Equity Committee and was honored with the Employment Equity Award in 1997. I welcome Dr. Savory to the microphone.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I am speaking on unceded Indigenous lands. The Kanean-Kikaka Nation is recognized as the custodians of these lands. After our two great presenters providing us their views, Indigenous voices, and architectural views on sustainable future, I am honored to share with you how our youth engagement model can help reach the changes required for a better future. Next slide, please. We will go over the inspiration behind our name, our mission, the issues that we tackle and how we do it. We will present a profile of our participants, the impact of their work, the reward they get, and we will conclude with some notes. Thank you. Next up. The inspiration behind our name. Olympe de la Parole Canada, Voices of Olympia Canada, is named after Olympe de Gouges, a French politician, playwright, feminist, and early advocate for the rights of women and girls. In 1791, she authored La Déclaration des droits de la femme et de la citoyenne, to contrast with the official Déclaration des droits de l'homme et du citoyen, published the same year. Thank you. Because of her writing, Olympe de Gouges was convicted of treason and was beheaded in Paris in 1793. Modern scholars agree that she does not hold a deserved place in historiography. To rectify and update the record, we have formed a non-profit organization with charity status in Canada. Olympe de la Parole Canada, Voices of Olympia Canada, is a global citizenship learning-based initiative. We are a member of the International Alliance of Women. Our mission is to reinforce and promote girls' voice through global citizenship learning and strategic advocacy informed by leadership, evidence-informed action, collaboration, and community engagement. The issues we tackle are all related to the Agenda 2030 SDGs, mainly poverty and hunger, girls' education, gender equality, girls and women empowerment, gender-based violence, human rights, social justice, climate change, and other emerging world national priorities. How do we do that? Through a yearly school competition, high school girls in Canada are introduced to issues discussed at the UN Commission on the Status of Women each year. They use inquiry, critical thinking, problem solving, and teamwork to understand the intersectionality of challenges faced by girls and women around the world and in Canada. They propose solutions that can be translated into action in their local communities. We accept participants attending high school at secondary 4-5 level. Their average age is usually 15 years old. They're willing to work in a team, and they agree, of course, to comply with all the rules of the school competition. We prepare our participants to the school competition by helping them to understand the issues and policies that may affect their future, by engaging them positively in finding solutions that are informed by evidence and support by collaboration. We offer them a very safe discussion space where they can express themselves. Thank you. Next. We mentor the high school girls in becoming informed leaders and active citizens. We build intergenerational bridge to transfer knowledge, wisdom, experience to the new generation of girls. Next. Next, thank you. We prepare the selected participants to optimize their experience as they participate in NGO-CSW parallel events. We encourage them to take part in NGO-CSW New York Youth Leaders and Young Professionals activities. And this year specifically, we have coached them to present their perspective on climate change at NGO-CSW-65 parallel event. And I am inviting all of you here right after our presentation. They will present their view on climate change and propose solutions. Next, please. We support the school by assigning a mentor and providing a list of reading and facilitate access to interviewees. Next, please. We provide mentorship on public speaking. We recruit domain experts to review the best project so we can award them a prize. And we also help fundraise to support implementation of their projects in their community. Next. Next. Voices of Volunteer Canada was launched officially in Montreal on November 2017 and was piloted among 30 participants from 5 schools in collaboration with Indigenous communities and other community groups. Next. The first cohort, we asked the first cohort to explain how access to technology could contribute to the empowerment of Indigenous girls and women in a particular region in Canada. And this is what they have done. Next. We have those teams who participated. The first one, Villa Maria, have proposed to use Raspberry Pi technology to disseminate mental health information among Nunavut youth girls and women. Another group has used technology to empower young adolescents in Kanawake with diabetes 2, use technology to empower those girls to take charge of their chronic disease. The third team have used technology to see how that can help the youth living in Iqaluit. And the fourth team has proposed a project on a distance university. Thank you. Next. Second cohort, we have asked them to analyze the impact of feminization of poverty on the empowerment of women and the development of girls in Canada. And this is what they have done. Next. Collège International Marie de France had a project. It's a reading workshop. Raconte-moi une histoire, raconte-moi ton histoire. And they have work on homeless women. They have work on single parents family, and they have work on prostitution. Next. We have asked them this year to explain the impact of climate change on the empowerment of girls and women in Canada. And this is what they are proposing. We have 7 teams, and they are working on the mental burden on women in Montreal. They are working on food security in Indigenous community. They are working on climate policy. They are working on decarbonization of transportation and lithium mining in Quebec. And they are working on climate policy and youth advocacy. Thank you. Next. After they finish doing all those kind of work, for sure, they have some rewards. And this is how we reward our winners. We provide scholarship to the first 4 projects. And it varies from $2,500 to $1,000. Next, please. We provide a certificate attesting the community hours they involve in this competition. And we have a peer recognition award, whereas a jury composed of young girls and boys will decide which is the best project according to a young audience, which project is the most compelling to the youth. Next. Of course, we do provide a reward to our winners by giving scholarship and so on. But the real winners of these projects are actually the local communities directly benefiting from our young participants' effort, the larger Canadian society, and ultimately the world. Next. These are some impacts of what happened so far. In 2018, the first prize-winning project on Indigenous mental health was presented at the Idea Fair and Learning Circle on Indigenous Gender and Wellness, organized by the Canadian Institute of Health Research. Next. And in 2019, first prize-winning team from Collège International Marie de France collaborated with Association des Parents de Côte-des-Neiges in Montreal. They have implemented weekly reading sessions delivered to young children of allophone immigrants' parents to allow those parents to go learn French. Thank you. Next. In 2018, second prize winner with jury mention for best essay had their work published in First People, Child and Family Review. And this was the project on having young adolescents taking charge of diabetes using technology. Thank you. Next. One of our winning projects on homeless women, they have developed in collaboration with Rue des Femmes being a shelter for homeless women. So our winning team have designed a database of resources available for homeless women throughout Canada. Next, please. Olympe de la Parole Canada was among the 7 Canadian projects nominated for the World Summit on Information Society in category Action Line C10. Thank you. Next. And in 2020, the result of each winning team project's video were published in the United Nations 75th anniversary ebook, Thank You, United Nations. This year, our participant will present 7 youth perspectives at their parallel event on the impact of climate change on the empowerment of Indigenous and non-Indigenous women and girls in Canada right after this presentation. Thank you. Next. What we have seen so far is an increase in the number of participants, of course, in the number of schools involved, the number of projects, and most notably was the intensity of youth engagement in terms of collaboration with community organization and involvement in Voices of Olympia Canada advocacy activity. Next. In a world where women continue to struggle for gender equality, social justice, and human rights, we believe that empowering girls through global citizenship learning is our best hope to foster youth engagement, transform communities, and turn the tides towards sustainability and resilience. Next. Olympe de la Parole Canada, Voices of Olympia Canada is rising to empower girls to participate in building a fair and equal society where social justice, and gender equality thrive. We are a young NGO and we welcome your help in terms of time, advice, guidance, collaboration, experience, and money. Next. Whatever reason inspire your heart to help us, just know that to empower young girls, uplift us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Savory. Your work with youth in Canada is an initiative that engages students in the UN process of advocacy, action, and support of a common agenda. It is well received within the Montreal, Quebec community, and I know it is expanding across Canada. Thank you so much. Our next presenter, Catherine Sophia Dimitrolis, is a political scientist and jurist, specializes in public administration, comparative political analysis, European Union law, and alternative dispute resolution. For 25 years, she has been providing policy advice, research, and expertise to various public institutions at the European and national levels, including successively the European Parliament, the French National Assembly, the Japanese Ministry of the Interior, the European Commission, and the European Economic and Social Committee. She also serves as a mediator of justice at the Paris Court of Appeal, a conciliator of justice at the Ministry of Justice, and a commissioner at the Banque de France, at the same time as a committed feminist and European activist. She is elected 5th president of the Association of Women of Southern Europe, AFEM. I welcome Maître Catherine Sophia Dimitrolis, the IAW Regional VP for Europe and the president of AFEM, to the panel.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, Mesdames, Messieurs, chers amis. Je tiens à vous remercier tout d'abord pour l'opportunité que vous nous donnez de présenter une vision de la région euro-méditerranéenne, et cela en français, qui est aussi une langue internationale de l'AIF. Permettez-moi de présenter la FEM, qui est une membre historique de l'Alliance internationale des femmes. La FEM, qui est la première fédération féministe des pays du sud de l'Europe à vocation euro-méditerranéenne, créée lors de la conférence mondiale de Beijing, dans le but de promouvoir une Europe démocratique, sociale et laïque, fondée sur l'égalité entre femmes et hommes, mais aussi dans le but de renforcer la société civile euro-méditerranéenne sur la base des mêmes valeurs et droits universels. La FEM est connue pour sa contribution historique lors de l'élaboration des traités européens dans les années 2000, qui a abouti à la consécration de l'égalité entre femmes et hommes parmi les droits fondamentaux et les valeurs essentielles de l'Union européenne. Elle a aussi apporté sa contribution à l'élaboration de la Convention d'Istanbul, à sa ratification et sa défense aujourd'hui, en tant que ONG, président de la conférence des ONG du Conseil de l'Europe. Et par ailleurs, elle est à la pointe des mobilisations du mouvement des femmes dans le cadre du partenariat euro-méditerranéen, c'est-à-dire de la politique extérieure de l'Union européenne vis-à-vis de ses voisins du Sud, qui a depuis 25 ans suscité de grands espoirs. Avant toute considération, permettez-moi de rendre un hommage ému aux femmes de l'autre rive de la Méditerranée, qui depuis une décennie, dans les révolutions du printemps arabe, ont mené au plus haut point le combat pour les droits des femmes, qui est indissociable du combat pour la démocratie, la liberté et la dignité, qui ont renversé des dictatures sanglantes. Permettez-moi de rendre hommage à toutes les femmes et aux hommes qui, au sacrifice de leur vie, défendent ces valeurs universelles en Méditerranée et aujourd'hui au-delà jusqu'à l'Oural en Ukraine. Elles ont ouvert la voie d'une révolution des femmes qui, partout dans le monde, lutte contre les systèmes d'oppression et les extrémismes. Notre région euroméditerranéenne illustre tragiquement un ensemble de défis qui ébranlent le monde, car elle est l'épicentre de violences politiques, de guerres, de catastrophes humanitaires, économiques et aujourd'hui sanitaires, qui ont des effets dévastateurs sur l'environnement et plongent la population dans la désespérance humaine. Elle est de plus le hotspot, comme on dit en anglais, de changements climatiques majeurs et la région du monde la plus soumise au stress hydrique. Nous vivons déjà sécheresse, hausse de température, incendies, tempêtes, inondations qui nous frappent durement et qui ont des effets pernicieux sur la vie, la santé, la sécurité alimentaire, le déplacement des populations. Les plus vulnérables et les plus pauvres sont les plus touchés et on sait que 70% de cette population sont des femmes et 60% et plus des femmes font partie des migrants internationaux, y compris dans cette région. Les prévisions sont alarmantes dans notre région, qui est dangereuse pour les femmes, déjà victimes d'inégalités, de violences exacerbées et qui seront encore plus en danger par des événements climatiques qui induisent des déplacements, la traite des êtres humains, l'exploitation au lendemain d'une inondation, d'une sécheresse ou d'une famine. Donc nous nous attendons à ce que les femmes vivent encore dans des conditions plus précaires. Dès lors, on peut se demander quelle est la réponse qui est donnée aujourd'hui dans cette région, car elle préfigure l'avenir du monde. Et les solutions, les responsabilités sont bien connues. Nous ne cessons, les femmes des deux rives de la Méditerranée, de rappeler que l'égalité entre femmes et hommes est une valeur prééminente, proclamée et imposée dans tous les domaines par des traités de portée européenne et mondiale, depuis la Charte des Nations Unies, en passant par les traités européens jusqu'au traité le plus récent, la Convention d'Istanbul. Ces traités ne se limitent pas à interdire les discriminations en raison du sexe, ils exigent la lutte contre toutes les inégalités et toutes les violences qui frappent les femmes, la moitié de la population mondiale, et la promotion de l'égalité réelle entre femmes et hommes en tout domaine. Ils exigent une stratégie politique globale et des mesures positives adéquates. Cela n'est pas une option, mais c'est une obligation légale et un but premier qui s'impose à toutes les institutions internationales européennes, à tous les États membres et à tous les acteurs sur leur juridiction dans toutes les politiques, y compris dans le champ de la gouvernance environnementale au sein des régimes et politiques de changement climatique. Cela signifie que tout autre droit fondamental et toute action de la communauté internationale doit être lue et appliquée à la lumière de cette valeur de ce droit, y compris le droit à un niveau élevé de protection de l'environnement qui est consacré en Europe par le traité de l'Union européenne et par la Charte des droits fondamentaux de l'Union européenne. Il n'est pas inutile aussi de rappeler aujourd'hui que ces traités proclament le caractère universel et non négociable des droits des femmes et des filles qui font partie inaliénable et indivisible des droits de la personne humaine et qui excluent absolument que les traditions, religions ou cultures puissent être invoquées pour empêcher l'exercice de ces droits. Or, ces obligations sont rappelées dans ce cadre par le législateur européen et je vous invite à prendre connaissance de la résolution du Parlement européen dans le cadre de cette commission du statut de la femme et le législateur qui rappelle que le changement climatique n'est pas une question scientifique seulement, c'est une question sociale et une question de droits des femmes. L'Europe a l'ambition, comme le proclame sa présidente, d'être le premier homme sur la Lune. Autrement dit, d'être le continent pionnier en matière de zéro émission et d'ici dans les 30 prochaines années. Et dans ce but, des investissements gigantesques s'élevant à 750 milliards d'euros ont été déjà décidés pour les 7 prochaines années dans le cadre du plan de relance européen, mais aussi dans le cadre de son Green Deal, le pacte vert pour l'Europe. Cependant, encore faut-il prouver que la femme pourra être envoyée sur la Lune, car à la lecture de ces actes législatifs, souvent on ne trouve même pas le mot femme. On parle de consommateurs, de citoyens, de ménages. Or, il reste beaucoup à faire, à prendre réellement en compte la dimension de l'égalité entre hommes et femmes dans ces politiques et ces actes législatifs. Et au-delà de ces textes et au-delà de ce que nous attendons de la mise en œuvre de la COP26 de Glasgow au niveau international, qui elle aussi reconnaît la nécessité d'introduire l'égalité entre hommes et femmes dans toutes les politiques, au-delà donc de tous ces textes, il est important d'assurer une cohérence avec l'ensemble des autres instruments du droit international et surtout du droit humanitaire. Et il est important de tenir compte des tendances de fond que nous connaissons en Méditerranée, tendances systémiques qui doivent être renversées, faute de quoi aucun texte et aucun progrès ne pourrait être réalisé. Or, aujourd'hui, la tendance de fond dans notre région euroméditerranéenne, elle est à la régression grave de l'égalité entre hommes et femmes et des attaques violentes qui menacent la vie et les droits des femmes depuis une décennie maintenant, dans un contexte général de dérégulation économique et de montée en puissance des autoritarismes, populismes et extrémismes religieux, qui ont tout ceci en commun d'attaquer en premier les droits des femmes pour saper les fondements de l'état de droit et de la démocratie. Exclues donc de la gouvernance, les femmes subissent toutes ces conséquences d'oppression, exploitation et misère. Le Covid, par ailleurs, a été le révélateur et restera dans l'histoire comme le moment d'un déferlement mondial de violences dirigées contre les femmes, depuis leur foyer jusqu'au champ de guerre ou dans les voies de l'exil, et des signalements, une explosion de signalements nous parviennent de tous nos pays, de France, en passant par la Tunisie, la Grèce, l'Italie, l'Espagne, qui signalent non seulement des violences intrafamiliales, mais une exacerbation de tous les crimes, de l'exploitation sexuelle des femmes et filles immigrantes et réfugiées, souvent enfermées dans des conditions inhumaines, y compris dans leur pays d'accueil. Le Covid restera dans l'histoire comme le moment où 75% des travailleurs de santé, qui sont les femmes, ont assuré et assurent la survie du système sanitaire mondial. Pourtant, leur vulnérabilité s'aggrave à mesure que sont réduites durablement leurs moyens d'existence jusqu'à la perte de leur travail, car elles sont majoritaires dans l'économie informelle et précaire. Même en France, une femme sur 3 a vu son activité professionnelle s'arrêter et 84% des travailleuses en Europe sont au risque de chômage car elles sont dans les emplois frappés par le Covid. Or, dans ces mêmes conditions, l'incapacité des États de prendre en compte la dimension de l'égalité et les droits des femmes est flagrante. Au lieu d'assurer cette obligation, au cœur même de l'Europe, des attaques violentes contre les droits des femmes et contre leurs associations ont atteint des niveaux alarmants et sans précédent dans des pays qui ont remis même à cause le droit des femmes à disposer de leur corps, qui ont bloqué la ratification de la Convention du Conseil de l'Europe pour la prévention et la lutte contre les violences à l'égard des femmes, traité qui aujourd'hui n'est pas encore ratifié par l'Union européenne en raison de ces obstacles. Et si bien qu'aujourd'hui, l'Europe fait face à une scission entre États promoteurs et États rétrogrades et obscurantistes en matière de droits des femmes. À cette situation, les guerres périphériques à l'extérieur de l'Union et ses frontières ajoutent au chaos et elles jettent sur le chemin de l'exil des centaines de millions de femmes et d'enfants. Et force est de constater que les États européens et l'Union ne sont pas montrés à la hauteur de cette situation et n'ont pas accueilli comme il se doit ces rescapés de la mort. La tendance au nord comme au sud de la Méditerranée et à la désignation des réfugiés et des migrants comme boucs émissaires, le sacro-saint principe de la libre circulation a lui-même vacillé et il s'ensuit une tendance sécuritaire et une militarisation générale des rapports qui ajoute à l'échec du droit international européen. Le cas de la Syrie depuis 11 ans, où 10 millions de déplacés ont été tragiquement mis dans des situations d'insuffisance criante d'aide humanitaire et 3 millions sont encore soumis au bombardement des avions syriens et russes est flagrant. Le cas de ce qu'on appelait la crise des réfugiés en 2015 et 2016 qui a amené à l'Europe 1 million de personnes et la mort de plusieurs milliers d'entre elles en Méditerranée s'est traduit depuis par des décisions qui visent à accélérer le retour des personnes et la réadmission dans leur état d'origine, d'externaliser et d'empêcher leur déplacement et de conditionner l'aide au développement de l'Europe à ce contrôle des migrations et des frontières. L'obligation même de sauvetage des vies en Méditerranée a été mise en danger avec la criminalisation des navires humanitaires et la situation demeure encore dramatique. En revanche, l'Europe forteresse est déjà une réalité. 180 km de murs sont déjà construits qui ont coûté 353 millions et il y a des voix qui réclament même la construction de 3200 km au prix de 1 à 5 milliards d'euros. Or, ces frontières sont aujourd'hui des zones de non-droit qui sont interdites au regard du monde. Au lieu d'affirmer le caractère fondamental du droit d'asile, l'Union vise à autoriser les autorités nationales à appliquer à toute demande d'asile la procédure accélérée aux frontières et rend la demande d'asile et le besoin de protection plus illusoire pour ces populations et permet la légalisation des expulsions massives. Cela a été le cas flagrant dans la situation récente qu'on a vue à la frontière Est entre Pologne et Biélorussie, voyant des femmes et des enfants mourir dans les forêts par hypothermie, par soif et manque de soins. L'escalade de cette situation de violence et de violation des droits humains et du droit international atteint aujourd'hui son apogée avec l'invasion militaire brutale de l'Ukraine par la Fédération de Russie depuis le 24 février qui ébranle l'Europe et le monde entier. Une guerre totale avec son horrible cortège de crimes de guerre et de crimes contre l'humanité est menée contre le peuple ukrainien et ses autorités démocratiquement élus, procédant à la destruction systématique des infrastructures, habitations, hôpitaux, entraînant la mort de nombreux civils, de femmes et des enfants, et semant la terreur dans la population civile qui est poussée sur les routes de l'exil pour échapper aux conséquences de la guerre. Plus de 2,5 millions de personnes sont déjà accueillies en Europe. Elle fait de nouveau planer le spectre de la terreur nucléaire et ses conséquences sont incommensurables et durables pour la sécurité, la stabilité et l'économie mondiale pour tous les citoyens de la planète. L'hybris de cette barbarie éveille aujourd'hui la conscience du monde aux valeurs de la paix, qui est la première de tous les droits et la condition de notre survie, la valeur de la démocratie et des droits humains. Cette situation fait entrer l'ordre mondial dans une ère nouvelle et l'unité et la solidarité pour la défense de ces valeurs et du droit est sans précédent. Elle mobilise l'ensemble des États, des institutions, des acteurs de la communauté internationale. Or, l'Europe tire ses leçons pour sa souveraineté, sa gouvernance, son indépendance énergétique. Elle fait preuve d'une grande solidarité face aux drames humanitaires extraordinaires. Néanmoins, si tout cela préjuge d'un changement de cap, encore faut-il rompre avec l'attaque contre les valeurs universelles qui sont depuis trop longtemps relativisées est assumée par ceux et celles qui remettent en cause jusqu'au postulat d'une seule humanité et qui s'accommodent parfaitement de ces phénomènes dès lors que leurs intérêts politiques et économiques sont protégés. Encore faut-il pousser jusqu'au bout la logique de l'indivisibilité et universalité des droits humains qui ne peuvent pas supporter des pratiques illégales et inhumaines qui perdurent, ni une application inégalitaire des valeurs qui oublient les droits des femmes. Cela implique l'application du droit humanitaire en tout premier lieu, implique d'ouvrir les frontières, d'installer des couloirs humanitaires, d'accueillir sans discrimination les réfugiés et les migrants, en donnant la priorité aux besoins des femmes et des filles déplacées et réfugiées qui doivent avoir une protection spéciale, de refuser le retour forcé des réfugiés, de dire non à l'immunité des crimes de guerre, d'augmenter la contribution à l'aide humanitaire. L'Europe a le premier devoir d'aider les personnes les plus vulnérables, les femmes et les enfants, surtout en ce moment de crise. Autrement, elle trahit ses valeurs. Permettez-moi de conclure en disant que toute réponse à la crise mondiale que nous connaissons aujourd'hui doit placer au centre l'humain et donner la priorité à l'égalité entre femmes et hommes. Elle doit placer au centre des politiques publiques et des plans de relance, dans le contexte de l'aggravation de la crise économique, écologique et climatique, l'égalité entre femmes, hommes et femmes. Et cela doit comporter des sanctions et des mécanismes de suivi. Cela passe par la mise en œuvre de l'ensemble des droits sociaux fondamentaux et le financement des services qui les rendent effectifs. La santé, la protection contre la pauvreté, l'exclusion, la protection sociale universelle, l'égalité de rémunération. Et l'Europe a besoin de soins, d'une économie de soins. Elle a besoin d'infirmières, elle a besoin d'écoles. Elle n'a pas besoin d'armes et de murs. Nous devons avant tout soutenir les associations de femmes et la société civile qui s'engagent pour défendre l'acquis universel des traités, car ces mouvements, le système qui nous a conduits à cette situation de terreur, d'oppression et de misère, va continuer à se poursuivre sans contestation et sans relâche. Je vous remercie beaucoup.
Excellent. Merci, Maître Dimitrolis. Your engagement with the work of AFEM is quite revealing. We don't often get to hear those stories and participate in the discussion, so thank you for bringing that forward. The Mediterranean organizations are very strong and very active within IAW, and some of those organizations are represented here today. So we're really grateful for your presence and for the excellent work that you do to protect women. We are running short on time because the conversation was so very good that we couldn't cut anybody off. But I would like to open the mic to maybe one or two questions. Nadine, if you can bring up the everyone, the chat for everyone, so I can see and pull up a question from there. Or if you would like to, let me just go to everyone and see what questions are there. All right. So I see that Madame Ferretti, who is the president of the Greek Alliance of Women, is with us. Do you have a question or a comment for us, Madame? Okay, all right, she can only communicate by chat. So I do want to thank all of our panelists for their excellent work. First of all, for accepting the challenge to join us today and to be part of the panel, and for bringing a perspective that is fresh, that is new. We're engaged in this conversation about the climate crisis and how it impacts people. But when we hear from you directly, how it impacts in your field of study or your field of work, it really makes it real and gives us the visual in terms of the impact on people, the impact on communities. We know that the participants today will take this information to enrich their own conversations as they walk away and engage in conversations to move the needle towards a zero net carbon emission. So protecting women, protecting the environment are one in the same. We understand that, we know that. From the Indigenous perspective, our Mother Earth is sick and therefore her children are sick, and we have to be aware of that and continue to work towards health. From individual women who are in situations of crisis and violence, we know that we have to go after and protect them. We have to wrap our arms around them and make sure that there are policies and actions in place to ensure their safety. We also know that the youth is the future, but the future is now. And so engaging them now is very important so that that conversation builds and increases. I'd like to invite you all to join Madame Savory's presentation, which will be solely focused on the youth perspective. And that she shared that in the chat for us. You can join that link. That session starts at 12 o'clock. So I hope you will remain with us and be a part of that conversation. It is important that we support our youth and that we be there for them. And this is one opportunity where we can do that. So thank you, my friends. Thank you, participants. Thank you, panelists. I give you a big hug and have a great day and have a wonderful CSW. Be well, stay on if you're joining Dr. Savory's presentation. It's the same link, so stay with us. Be well. That was excellent, Dr. Savory. Thank you. That was excellent, Dr. Savory.